And so this made police really suspicious of Layout because his story was so outrageous, and also he's talking about a There is a small hole in the ground in Australia that has claimed the lives of at least 16 people. Today, I'm going to tell you what's inside of that hole. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload 3 or 4 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please offer to take the like button out to a beautiful... No matter how absurd this story gets, remember, it's true. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right channel because that's all we do, and we upload 3. Today, I'm going to share 3 stories that scared me. But before we get into those stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right channel because that's all we do, and we upload 3 or 4 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please kidnap the like button, tie them up, and then forcibly brush their teeth, and then make them drink orange juice afterwards. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories. In 2010, Kayla was a senior at the University of California, Santa Barbara, a big party school. And one Friday evening, Kayla and her friends were at a big party, and Kayla was having a great time, but she was starting to feel really tired. And so she asked her friends if maybe they wanted to leave early, but none of them did. And so Kayla left on her own. Luckily, her house was just down the road, and so she was at her front door in a matter of minutes. That night, her 2 roommates, who were also college seniors, had decided to stay in and just have a nice night with a couple of friends having some wine. And so when Kayla walked inside, she happened to turn to the right, and she looked on the closest wall where there was a sofa, and she saw there was a guy laying there with a blanket up to his chin, and his eyes were wide open. She didn't recognize him, but he was staring at her, and she figured, oh, he must be a friend of her roommates. But as she walked across the room, she kind of glanced back at him, and he had pulled the covers down slightly, and he had lifted his head up, and he was staring at her kind of menacingly. And so Kayla got a really bad vibe from this guy and just kind of hustled into her room, shut the door behind her, and locked it, something she never did. And a few minutes later, she was in her bed and she was passed out. A couple of hours later, she woke up to what sounded like tapping on wood. And so she sat up in her bed and she's kind of looking around. She had a couple drinks the night before and she's half asleep, so she's a bit disoriented. But finally, when she gets her bearings, she realizes this tapping sound is the sound of someone drumming their fingers on the outside of her door. And so she's looking at her door, wondering who would be doing that. And then all of a sudden, the drumming stops, and it's replaced by the sound of this person scratching on the outside of the door. And so now Kayla's thinking, okay, is this guy who was out on that couch, is he playing a joke on me? And so she's sitting there wondering if she should just go over there and open the door and tell him to stop. But before she gets out of her bed, the scratching gets louder and louder and louder until it's so loud that it's kind of menacing. And so Kayla decides she's not going to go out there. And so instead, she pulls out her phone and she texts her roommate and says, hey, can you please come out in the living room and take care of your friend who's harassing me? But she doesn't get a response from that roommate, and the scratching is just still loud as ever. And so she texts her other roommate the same message, come out and take care of your buddy here. But again, she doesn't get a response. And now the scratching on the door has stopped, and it's been replaced by jiggling of her doorknob. And so now Kayla is just mad because this is obviously a prank and it's a dumb prank. And so she yells out, hey, stop! But it doesn't do anything. And so now Kayla's like, okay, I gotta call my roommates, wake them up, they'll come out and they'll handle it. And so she calls one of her roommates, and they do pick up this time. And Kayla angrily tells them, hey, come out into the living room and tell your friend to knock it off. He's totally harassing me. And her roommate was confused. She's trying to make sense of what Kayla's saying, and she says, Kayla, what are you talking about? What friend are you talking about? And Kayla says, the guy sleeping on the couch, the guy in our living room sleeping on the couch. And her roommate said, Kayla, we didn't have anybody over last night. Is somebody out there?